Well, first of all, I think it's one thing to start something. It's another thing to keep it going. So when you're in the middle of it, when you're trying to start something, that's your focus. Then when it's up and running, you're defending it or trying to keep it going and things like that. And so often people find themselves at the point where they're going to need to have some kind of succession, sort of unready for it and hadn't really considered it. It just came upon them as it became clear, I can't be here forever. This is maybe possibly becoming harder to kind of keep on top of, and who's going to take care of it when I'm gone? So this may be partly an issue for families of, even though it seems like a great distance in the future, the earlier you start to think about it, the better. Because at some point you will, as a human being, age, and that will have effects, one of which is you'll age to the point possibly that you can't play the same role you used to, or you may pass away unexpectedly or even foreseeably. And who's going to kind of provide what you had been providing? And so identifying what you have been providing and objectifying it's very helpful, because you're saying, well, there's what I've been doing, but if someone else were to do it, these would be the things that need to be done. And to sort of name that, because the leadership succession would be, say, some people think of it as who's the next me that's going to do this. And that's not a bad way to look at it if you think it's only going to be one person. But sometimes what succeeds you might be a small number of people, a network that takes on the task of keeping an arrangement going, not just a person that's sort of the clone or the best clone of oneself. So in this sense, being open to the idea that there are tasks to be done, and then finding people to fit to the tasks, but to do it cooperatively in some kind of purposeful way as a network. And when you realize that could be put together gradually in anticipation of a time when you either withdraw or reduce your involvement, or perhaps you unexpectedly pass away, something's waiting to step into the wings. And people say, well, who would do that? Well, someone would do it if they understood it needed to be done, and that, for instance, that you want them to do it, because it's important for the person with the disability. So sometimes you just have to recognize that people will often do things if it makes sense, if they can see the reason to do it. And then the second question for people would have is, can I do it? So sometimes you have to approach people and give them the chance to think about, could I do that? Is that really something that I could do? And again, it's better to do that when you're still around. And then the third question is, for how long might I do it? Again, one of the techniques in that is for people to do it for a time, and recognizing that when I'm done doing it, whatever I've taken on, I'm responsible for finding my replacement. So leadership succession, if you want to put it that way, is finding people that will carry on parts or all of the leadership, finding them intentionally before you're into a crisis, so that you can more planfully, more leisurely get people lined up to take on things. Now, again, that for many people who are already busy just trying to keep an arrangement going or being very heavily involved in it, you think, where am I going to get the energy to do that? And that'd be a fair question. But the answer to that would be, if you've got more time, you can set aside a bit of time here and there, and it's not such a big ask, and you can begin to cultivate people that might step in one part or another of keeping the thing going. And sometimes it's surprising people that put their hand up. Many people think, oh, this is family business, and it can only be somebody from the family, a brother, sister, somebody like that. But there are people that are family friends, or even friends of the individual, that would see it as their business. But they won't stick their nose in because they feel it's not for me to interfere with this family and what they're trying to do. And so people say, well, why don't people step forward? Well, because you're there. That's why people don't step forward, because it's, they feel, they'd be invading your space. So if you want them to step forward, tell them it's really welcome. And start asking people. But if you are convinced yourself that nobody would ever do a nice thing, then you probably won't try very hard, because you think, oh, I'm doomed. There's no other nice person on the planet that has any spare time. They're all spoken for. And if you make that kind of assumption, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you don't really recognize that people will step forward. And that's why it's good for many families to see examples of people who have stepped forward and been invited forward and stayed. And so the inviting in and welcoming in is quite good. And even within families, many children of parents won't step forward because the parent thinks, oh, I'll spare them. That this is my burden, I'll spare you. But what it means is you're excluding them from doing something they might more naturally actually like to do. Because to do it now, they have to knock you off. And that's a kind of coup d'etat in the family, because you're not budging. You're not welcoming them in. This is my burden, and I'm not going to share it with anybody. And I remember one mother, the daughters had come to me. She had 4 daughters, and then a disabled daughter as well. And I'd helped facilitate a bit of planning and so on. But privately, some of the daughters had come to me and said, well, we'd like to do more, but we aren't welcomed because our mother is trying to protect us from, all of the, doing all this. And this is just the pattern that it had developed when the children were younger and so on. The mother took care of this. It was sort of, and her husband supported her to do it. Her name was Lois. So Lois and I had a little chat then one day, and I said, I sort of introduced the idea that you don't have to do everything. That even your own children want to do something relative to their sister. She just hadn't been conscious that she was actually making it hard for people to step forward by simply trying to do it all herself, or not ever asking anybody, would you help me with this? And of course, not only did, subsequent to that, when she realized that, because she really did care about this a lot, the daughters did step forward and became much more active. But more than that, she began to see that all kinds of people could be involved in her daughter's life, and others began to step forward because they were asked to. They were welcomed, they were encouraged, because lots of people were interested in her daughter. And I remember being in a grouping, a little network that had come together to do some planning, but now it wasn't just the mother and the father and the daughters now. The last time I was involved with them, there was a whole bunch of people there, which are going to be, in a sense, people that carry on. If she had dropped dead right then, those people would have stepped in and kept things going for the daughter. And that just as that situation developed, at a certain point, one of the daughters thought it would be great if her sister and her got a place to live together, and went and lived together. So she left the family home, and they went out into the world like many sisters might do. But the initiative came from that sister who really did want to be involved in her sister's life. So I think once you have a vision that it can happen, then you really have to kind of create space for people to kind of step forward and do it in some kind of organized way and start early. In some cases, you aren't the person that should organize it. So the parent could replace himself by finding someone to organize that rather than the parent organizing it, because remember, that parent may be very involved in keeping what you've got on the ground going. And so you'd say, I need some help. I'll take care of what's on the ground now, but would you mind helping and I'll help you, but helping find some other people to begin to think about the role of, should I not be able to do this, they could step in. So you could ask an asker, if you want to put it that way, who's really good at pulling people in if you're not. And not everybody is good at that. So you would be looking for the person to ask who would be the great asker in comparison to yourself. And so that lightens the load. And you now have two people working on the leadership succession where you had one. And of course, the more that get involved, you have more people. So you have more people coming to the table. So if you're trying to facilitate a family to do that, then you just need to walk all this through. And I don't know how many conversations I've had along this line of how do you find people and bring them into people's life, and how to do that and keep it all natural. So it is, people may be unfamiliar with it. So again, we're back to this factor of familiarization, that when people know what is possible, what the options are, they're in a better position to use those options. But if they had never considered them, never thought of them, it's no wonder that they stick with what they know, because that is doable. I mean, they know what they know. But they could do other things if they were aware of the potentials. That's why it's so great to, because there are families that just sort of do this without really thinking hugely about it. But having them share what they did creates a picture of what it looks like, and how they went about it and so on. And many of these stories reinforce the earlier story, but also add new dimensions about how they did it that might have been different from somebody else. So that familiarization is almost like planting seeds. But when would you do that? Well, I do it before people, I do it younger, at a younger age in life, so people can mull it over, let it sink in, that sort of thing. It's in the back of their mind. I'm going to get old to do something about that. Particularly if I'm involved in my family members' living situation, work situation, whatever it is.